Hello, investigators, and welcome to Until the End of Time. My name is Veronica. Thank you so much for joining me. This is going to be the Hemlock Vale preview season recap for December 18th. Before we get into the previews, though, I wanted to give a quick update on my life. You may have noticed that I haven't really been posting much, or maybe you read my community post. Basically, I'm not doing that great. I don't really want to go into the specifics of it. Safe to say, I'm not in any in immediate danger. I don't have to go to hospital or anything like that. But basically, I've just been really, really tired for the last couple of weeks. And what energy I have had has been going into school-related things, like study-related things, family stuff. I haven't really had as much time to play Arkham or really get into the depths of Arkham preview season, and as such I fell a little bit behind covering the preview season, and I felt kind of bad about that. I wondered if I should even do this video, but I ultimately decided that doing a video is of course better than doing nothing. But if this video is a bit shorter or a bit less refined than some of my other preview recaps, then you know why. Please don't worry about me. I'm going to be fine eventually, but it's been a bit of a thing. To that end, I'm actually not going to cover the two new investigators that we got previewed. They were previewed by Drawn to the Flame and Playing Board Games. Drawn to the Flame previewed Kohaku, did an excellent podcast on him, and we already saw a bunch of Kate in the announcement article, but Playing Board Games gave us her deck building, which means that we can now play her if we want to. I think these are both pretty interesting investigators. I think there's a lot to be said about them. If I have the energy and the time, I will definitely be looking forward to trying them in some sort of live stream coming soon, but I can't promise that right now. And if you're interested in hearing about them, please go check out the videos. I'll make sure that they are linked in the description. These fine folks tell you everything you need to know about them, these investigators. I really don't think I could add a lot right now, and I have a lot of other preview cards to get to, so let's focus on those. First up, thanks to Tengu and Plan, we got two new Guardian cards, Tinker and Hand-Eye Coordination. Starting off with Tinker, it is a one-cost Guardian event, 0 XP, Intellect and Agility icons. It is inside and upgrade traded, and it reads, fast, play only during your turn. Attach Tinker to a tool asset in your play area, limit 1 per asset, and the attached asset takes up 1 fewer hand or accessory slot. You still call that a wrench? So this is another slot increasing card. We've seen this in Guardian, we've seen it mostly in Bandolier, which is a fine card. It's a bit on the expensive side, takes an action to play, takes 2 resources to play, takes up a body slot. Tinker is pretty good in comparison to Bandolier. Of course, they do use slightly different traits, so maybe one deck will prefer Tinker to Bandolier. But in general, I think Tinker's just got good numbers. The other card to compare it to is something like Tool Belt. Tool Belt was from the Scarlet Keys, allows you to swap tools in and out. The benefit that Tinker has is that you can have multiple tools, you can have more tools than you need in play. Whereas Tool Belt, you do actually have to have those assets basically blanked while they're in the Tool Belt. So depending on your build, and I think especially Guardians who want to have their assets down and doing stuff, Tinker might be very nice for those kinds of decks. I've played this card a little bit in Wilson, and it's performed reasonably well. Next we have Hand-Eye Coordination. It is a level 1 Guardian event, intellect and combat icons, and it costs a single resource. It is inside traded. Fast, play only during your turn. Resolve an action ability on a tool or weapon asset you control without paying its action cost. Keep your eyes on the target. So this is an event that gives you an extra action, basically. We've seen these kinds of events before, usually in Rogue, but Guardian has also had Galvanize. Galvanize is a 2-cost event that you can get an extra action. It could only be used to fight, and you could ready a Guardian asset. I think one of the things people often complain about with Galvanize is that it is a 2-cost event. Hand-Eye Coordination being 1 cheaper might make all the difference in a faction that can be a little resource starved. And the other thing is that a tool, broadening this to tool assets also means that you can do it for clue related stuff, not just fighting related stuff, which is nice. That being said, it is only ignoring the action cost, so if you're using something like the shotgun, you're still having to spend the ammo. To that end, I think this is a nice little include, but not necessarily an auto include in any kind of Guardian decks. So yeah, Tinker and Hand-Eye Coordination, we can clearly see that Guardians are all about those tools in this expansion, And I definitely think there are some cards that, depending on which faction you have, you want to run this card, right? Chainsaw, I think, is just... I grabbed this because, yeah, a big two-handed weapon that you're going to be fighting with. I like these cards. They're straightforward, they're to the point, they're very Guardian. Then there are my preview cards. I also did a preview video. In case you missed it, there are actually 2 previews in that video. I know at least some people stopped watching at about halfway point. Make sure to go back and see the second preview card. Ancestral Token and Fine Tuning. I am going to save my voice and not talk about these anymore. If you're interested, go watch my preview video. Moving on, we have Bradley Galbraith's preview. Sorry for mispronouncing your name. And... yeah, these are neat. Purified and the Key of Solomon. We're talking about blessed cards and curse tokens. So starting off with Purified, we have a innate and blessed guardian skill, 0 XP and no skill icons, which is kind of interesting. You may commit Purified to any type of tests, max 1 committed per test, and if this test is successful, for each point you succeed by, to a maximum of 5, you either add a blessed token or remove a curse token from the Chaos bag. This is neat. This is kind of in a similar mind space as Predestined, which is a survivor card from the Instant Conspiracy. You commit it, doesn't have any icons, and then if you fail, you can either add 2 blast or remove 2 curse. Purified, I think, is generally just a little bit better. Up to 5 is a lot of tokens, and I think that's just better for like card economy. The challenge is that in a kind of typical Guardian way, you need to have the right tool for the job to make this work, because it's not giving you any boosts on any of your tests. You actually have to like really work to get that succeed by 5, which is weird. It's kind of a roguey thing as well, but I also kind of like it in the sort of like, yeah, it's not helping you. You need to have the right tools down to work with this. But maybe something like Well Prepared, which is a Guardian staple, could definitely help with this. It's also funny, when I previewed Ancestral Token, Bradley asked me about the max 5, because he of course had already seen Purified, which he also knew that it had a max 5. So it's kind of interesting to see that Guardians really are like, yeah, we're just throwing a bunch of blessed tokens in the bag this time around, which I like, because that was definitely something that Guardian was struggling with the first time around. So yeah, that's Purified. I think it's a good card. I don't think it's auto-include by any sense of the word, but if you like blessed tokens, or you're in a curse-heavy team that doesn't actually want to pull the curse tokens, this could be a very good card to put in your deck. Moving on to the Key of Solomon, this is an exciting card. It's the Secrets of the Unknown. It is a 4 XP Mystic card, so you're gonna be a little wild. 2 cost, and it is Willpower, Intellect, and double wild icon, so that alone is like pretty nice. It's item, tome, blessed, and cursed rated. Takes up a hand slot and has 2 free triggered abilities. The first, if there are more blessed than cursed tokens in the Chaos bag, you can remove a single blessed token from the Chaos bag and exhaust the Key of Solomon to heal up to 2 damage and or horror from an investigator or ally asset at your location. And then free trigger, if there are more cursed than blessed tokens in the Chaos bag, remove 1 cursed token from the Chaos bag and exhaust the Key of Solomon to gain 2 resources. This card screams Kohaku to me. Obviously, it's like caring about the number of blessed and cursed tokens in the bag, balancing those out, playing with them, toying with them. The fact that you only have to remove a single token for this effect is kind of wild to me. Like, heal 2 is definitely worth it for a single bless, and gaining 2 resources for a curse, mwah. The funny thing is that because this heals damage or horror, someone like Carolyn can take it, and it actually might be a very potent deck using Carolyn, Field Agent, and the Key of Solomon, assuming you can reliably add some blessed tokens to the Chaos bag, and we've already been talking about how Guardian gets more blessed this time around. You can just keep your Field Agent topped off, get some resources, and get free clues every turn. Like, that doesn't sound like that hard of a setup, and it seems really strong. So yeah, I'm excited for the Key of Solomon. I think this is going to be a card that Mystic Blessed Curse builds are really going to revolve around, and I'm excited. This is a cool design. It's not that flashy, right? Like, it's not getting you instant clues, it's not dealing lots of damage to an enemy, but getting resources and purifying the bag from the curse tokens or healing a bunch of damage and horror is definitely worth it. And only 2 cost for this asset, that's cheap, right? Like, it's 4 XP, but it's only 2 to put down. Alright, next up we have a trio of cards from Optimal Play, who did some very clickbaity videos. I really enjoyed those. It was silly, but it's also really fun. Drain Essence, Fake Credentials, and the Prismatic Spectacles. Drain Essence is a 0 XP 2 cost Mystic event, Willpower and Intellect icons. It is spell traded, as a lot of Mystic cards are. And it's a parlay. So Alessandra, of course, can take this and make sure to pack your fine clothes for this one. Choose an enemy at your location and test willpower X. X is the chosen enemy's fight value. If you succeed, move 1 damage from your investigator to the chosen enemy, pardon me, up to 2 damage instead if the chosen enemy is non-elite. What was yours is now mine. So, while this is maybe not directly comparable, I think this card actually has a lot of overlap with Spectral Razor in the sense that they are both sort of like, they're both fight events in the sense that they both deal damage to enemies, but the weird thing is that they both also kind of mitigate certain keywords, notably aloof and, in the case of Drain Essence, also retaliate. The fact that this is a parlay and not a fight, actually pretty relevant. It doesn't provoke attacks opportunity, which I guess fight events wouldn't anyway, but also doesn't care about aloof, doesn't care about retaliate, and we have that new elusive keyword, which whenever you hit an enemy or they hit you, they get to run away. Drain Essence doesn't care about that either, right? You just put the damage on there. That's not a fight. And so I think this is going in this sort of idea of mystic events that kind of mess with the rules of the game in the sense that it doesn't work the way a typical fight event would with a lot of keywords on enemies. The fact that it moves damage off of you, also very nice. A lot of mystics have lower health values, and so healing a little bit of damage, pretty nice. It is also a drawback. If you don't have any damage, this card doesn't do anything. So that's, again, interesting. And finally, I wouldn't be doing my job here if I wasn't talking about Parallel Agnes, who is the Blood Mage who can take damage to make spell events cheaper and then also shuffle them back in. And she can just keep draining essence, using it to fuel her other blood magic and also doing lots of damage to enemies. So that's very nice. Fake Credentials is an interesting card. It is a 3-cost 0 XP rogue asset, single intellect icon. Item and Illicit takes up that hand slot and has a pretty long action ability. So you choose an enemy at your location, you exhaust the fake credential, and you parlay. You test Intellect 1. This test gets +1 difficulty for each suspicion on fake credentials. If you succeed, you discover 1 clue at your location and place a resource on fake credentials as suspicion. If you fail, you either discard the fake credentials or the chosen enemy attacks you. Okay, so at first I didn't really like this card. It felt like they took Damning Testimony and Lockpicks, and they took the drawbacks of both and the benefits of neither, in the sense that in order to use this card, you have to have an enemy at your location, you have to exhaust it, and you can only ever get a single clue from a single activation. So that's not great as far as clue tech is concerned. However, this card does have some upsides. The obvious one is, especially when combined with Fine Clothes, the skill test in this is going to be very easy to begin with. Even Intellect 1, if you don't have the Fine Clothes, pretty trivial for most rogues that might want to run this. And at that point, you are just cheating the Shroud value, right? This is repeatable cheating the Shroud value. If you're dealing with 4 Shroud, 5 Shroud, I think this starts getting a little bit more of a benefit over something like Lockpicks because, yeah, you just don't have to care about what the Shroud value is. The other thing is that, again, it is a parlay. It won't provoke attacks opportunity. And I think this is where this card starts to really shine in comparison to some of the other level 0 options for rogues, especially when you're talking about Trish. Trish is an investigator that loves to have enemies at her location when she gets clues, because she can then either get additional clues or evade those enemies, but that often means having to run stuff like Obfuscation to cancel attacks opportunity. This comes with its own Obfuscation baked in, and I do want to admit, I think that is kind of neat. I still don't love this card. I think that just as the numbers go, it's just a little rough. Couldn't this have costed like 2 or maybe 1? Or maybe just don't make it exhaust. I think that's the big one. I would have loved this card not exhausting, because then you could have sleight of handed it in and be like, look at my fake credentials, and now they're gone. But as it sits, I don't think this card is unplayable. I think it has a home in a couple of places. I think it's still, outclassed by some better cards as we level up, but that's fine. It's a neat little include. And then finally, a card I'm quite excited about. It's the Prismatic Spectacles, Lens to the Otherworld. It is a 2 XP Seeker asset, costs 2 resources, has a single intellect icon, and it is item, relic, and cursed traded. Takes up that accessory slot, and it has an action. You add a curse token to the chaos bag and investigate. You get +2 skill value for the investigation, and if a curse token is revealed during this investigation, you may exhaust the Prismatic Spectacles to discover 1 additional clue at your location. So this is quite interesting in the Seeker Curse strategy, which is something that was meant to be in Innsmouth, but I think a lot of people would agree didn't really come off. So one of the problems there is that a lot of the reward for revealing a curse token ended up in Mystic as well, with that whole Mystic spell suite of Armageddon, Eye of Chaos, and Shroud of Shadows. Whereas Seeker got a bunch of benefits for having a bunch of curses in the bag, but those benefits didn't tend to be that great, and having a whole bunch of curse tokens in the bag is a great way of failing a bunch of tests. I think Prismatic Spectacle is a lot more realistic of a card, seeing adding curses to the bag and having curses in the bag as a benefit. So for starters, it has an add curse tokens built into using it, which is kind of nice. If you're hoping to pull those curse tokens back out, you do need them to go back in, otherwise this card isn't that good. Secondly, once you add ways of manipulating the curse tokens, like Favor of the Moon, suddenly this turns into like a fingerprint kit, and that's pretty great, right? Extra clues can really make up for having to fill maybe a test or two here and there when you pull curse tokens at inopportune times. And I think this is like, the numbers on this are good, right? The numbers on this are good. I think it slots into a strategy that I'm still not entirely sure works, right? Seeker Curse is still kind of an iffy thing, but we're getting closer, and this is definitely the kind of cards I think they need to print in order for that strategy to really go off. And if you're in a team that really says like, yeah, we're going to do curse stuff, this is a card you want to grab. One final thing, the fact that this gives a +2 skill value for the investigation, kind of neat. Maybe this is a thing for off-class Seekers, right? I could definitely see, or maybe Mystics that get curse access. There's a bunch of characters that now get curse access. So if you're playing Parallel Gym and you want to use your 3 intellect to get clues, this is kind of nice, right? It's big enough of a boost that it's going to be usable as long as you don't pull that curse back out, because then, it kind of negates itself. So yeah, excited for this card, interested to see if it'll actually, if it actually will work, but, as it sits, I think this is a good little design. Well, moving on to playing board games, in addition to previewing the Kate backside, they also had 2 cards, Well Dressed and Transmogrify. Well Dressed is a neutral skill with a single wild icon, 0 XP, practiced and fortune traded. Hilariously, everybody's been joking about how Rex cannot be well dressed because he can't take fortune cards, but the fact that it is practiced does matter for a couple of investigators and other cards. The important thing about this card is, of course, that while it is committed to a skill test during a parlay, it gains triple wild icons. The fine clothes do all the talking. I don't think it's mysterious that fine clothes is in the flavor text, and it is, of course, also a very important card for parlay archetypes. I believe we are kind of assuming that fine clothes or something like fine clothes won't be in this expansion. And so people have been asking, if you want to play an Alexander deck and you don't have fine clothes because you don't own the Dunwich Legacy, how does that work? And I think this is a reasonable answer in that direction. It is not the same as fine clothes, right? Fine clothes is very powerful, making all your parlays too easier, but it is also a card that is disproportionately powerful when you are parlaying. 4 wild icons for a 0 XP skill is great. People were speculating this might be 3 wild icons and already considering playing this. At 4 wild icons, this is just fantastic, right? That is a promise of power, but only for parlays. And especially now that Parlay is pretty strongly in Rogue, for this expansion at least, because of course it is an Alessandra theme, over-succeeding becomes much more of a thing, and the 4 wild icons can come in handy even if you're already pretty likely to pass the test. And I don't even mind putting both well-dressed and fine clothes in my deck, right? There are some Parlay tests where you really just want to succeed by 6. Cough, grift, cough. So yeah, a neat little card. I don't think it's that spectacular, but it's definitely putting in work. And 1 wild icon, when it's not being used for parlay, is actually not the worst. You can definitely use this. The other card, Transmogrify. Things are going to get weird in here. We have a 1-cost 0 XP Seeker event, Willpower, Intellect icons, Gambit, and Science traded. Evade. You may use Intellect instead of Agility for this evasion attempt. If you succeed and the enemy is non-elite, attach Transmogrify to it. And the attached enemy gains Massive, Cannot Move, Reaction after you evade this enemy, discover 1 clue at its location, limit once per round. I said, blow it up, not blow it up. Whew, this is a weird one. First thing, I actually like that it says you may use Intellect instead of Agility. If you have a better Agility, you don't have to use your Intellect. You can just stick with the Agility. The second thing is that the way that the timing works out, I'm pretty confident you get to attach this and then immediately discover a clue, because it is also an evade as part of the Transmogrify. And the way that the triggers work out, I believe should work out. It's not entirely clear to me. I would like to get that double checked by FFG, but most of the people I talked to agreed that that should be the way it works. In which case, this is pretty nice, right? Like, one cost, do an evasion, also get a clue. That's pretty reasonable. And then there's this whole, it turns massive and you can use it to get clues. So, it's weird. The card that I thought of was Existential Riddle, which was my preview card for last season. But actually, now that I think about it some more, it's like, it's not quite the same, right? Transmogrify turns the card from nobody's problem to everybody's problem. But on the other hand, it is also, now it's a way to get clues when you evade them. So maybe your friendly rogue loves to run this and pickpocket the enemy while they're getting clues off of them. But it's also just a successful evasion with intellect, which some seekers are happy enough to run this, evade the enemy, and then just get out of town, right? If you're playing solo, I could definitely see this card being good just for that reason. It's a weird effect, and I kind of love that for Seeker. It's really neat. And then finally, previewed just today, Derby K previewed Hatchet and Token of Fate. 2 more Survivor cards, which is nice because we haven't seen a lot of Survivor since the start of previous season. So I'm very curious to see if these cards indicate the direction Survivor is going to go in this box. Hatchet is a 1 XP Survivor asset that costs 2 resources, has an agility icon, and takes up a hand slot. It is item, tool, weapon, and range traded, and it has this fight ability that's quite interesting. So you add your agility to the skill value for this attack. So combining agility plus combat, you're probably pretty likely to succeed. And the attack deals +1 damage. I'm liking it so far. Then, if this attack defeats an enemy, discard Hatchet. Okay, less great now. But otherwise, you lose control of Hatchet and attach it to the attacked enemy. Attached enemy gains reaction. When attached enemy is defeated, take control of Hatchet. Any investigator Hatchet's location may trigger this ability. So this is weird, right? It's a weapon that you don't want to use to kill enemies, because if you do, you're discarding it. Or maybe that's fine. We are in Survivor after all, and Survivor does have discard shenanigans. We've already seen Push to the Limit is coming in this box, which allows you to activate an action ability on an asset in your discard pile and then shuffle it back in. So, maybe that's just what you do. But the idea that this card is something that you're going to play and then use it to fight one enemy, and then it's discarded, that doesn't feel great to me, right? This costs an action and 2 resources to play. If you're just looking to kill one enemy, you can probably do better than this. Now, if you're Yorick, obviously, you can replay this, and it is a little bit more expensive, but it's otherwise like a knife with a higher skill boost, because your agility is probably going to be pretty reasonable in Yorick. At which point, that might be what you're doing with this. The thing that I'm really, trying to place this is, maybe you can include this as your second weapon on top of another one-handed weapon. And then if you're just fighting 1 or 2 health enemies, you use whatever your main weapon. Maybe it's a gun, maybe it's an enchanted blade, maybe it's something like that, right? But then when you come up against a 3 or 4 health enemy, you throw the hatchet at them, you hit them for 2 damage, and then you hit them with your other weapon, you get the hatchet back. So you're kind of saving ammo on whatever enchanted blade or gun you're running. Which seems like that seems like the play pattern I want to be doing. The main question is, are there enough enemies where that is something you're going to be doing? I don't know. The other thing is worth noting is that the hatchet, if you fail, you still lose control of the hatchet, but obviously it doesn't get discarded. So maybe on higher difficulties, this can be a thing where you're kind of gambling with the idea of is this going to hit or not. Usually, I like my weapons to defeat enemies, right? That is usually why I put weapons in my deck. So this card, it's very Survivor in the sense that you don't want it to defeat the enemy. The other card I just wanted to bring up is Pitchfork, because it also has this lose control ability. So this is clearly a theme for this cycle. Survivors are using weapons that they lose control of, which is wild, and I kind of love it. And then there's Token of Fate. So I do want to bring up, I don't know if Derby K is the make. I should have checked that before, but there is a Return to the Intimate Conspiracy fan-made. That's not an official FFG product. That is something that the fans made, and there is actually an upgraded Token of Fate in that, and I know Derby K talked about it, so the fact that he now gets the official upgraded Token of Fate, kind of hilarious. Alright, so it's a 2 cost, 3 XP Survivor asset, willpower and intellect icons. 1 additional willpower icon over the original, and 3 more XP than the original Token of Fate. They both take up the accessory slot. The upgraded token of fate is item, charm, and blessed rated. And it has this reaction. After a skill test ends in which one or more curse or autofill tokens were revealed, exhaust token of fate, add that many blessed tokens to the chaos bag. So far, it is the same as token of fate level 0. Then, if this skill test failed, after resolving all effects from the failed test, the performing investigator may attempt that test again, max once per test. So, this is interesting autofill protection, and blast generation, and curse mitigation, and sort of live and learn on a stick. It's very Survivor. So, I don't think Token of Fate level 0 got played a ton. I think it's actually maybe a little underappreciated, but it's worth saying that, like, there's not that many teams that want to add a lot of curse tokens and had a benefit for blessed tokens and had a survivor with a spare accessory slot, because survivor accessory slots tend to be pretty good. So I think Token of Fate just kind of got pushed out by better options being available, but I don't think the card is unplayable. The upgraded Token of Fate is quite strong. Just being autofill protection, this is already pretty reasonable. Now keep in mind, this is only protecting you really against autofills on tests that you want to succeed on, which sounds obvious, but the thing to keep in mind is that it doesn't help you on like treachery effects or other stuff where it does something for each point you fail by. Because you don't cancel the effects of the skill test, you just perform it again. So if it's a running remains test, you don't want to repeat that because you're just going to take more horror or do nothing if you succeed. However, assuming you're on high enough player count, it could be worth it even if you have 0 curse tokens in the bag, because you're going to pull that autofill once every so often, and you just get to take the test again and get a free blessed token for your trouble. That's fine. I think where this card really shines is, of course, when you start having a bunch of curse tokens in the bag. And it's kind of funny, the Prismatic Spectacle, I really also wanted to combo that with this card, because once you start flooding the bag with curses, you're obviously going to fail some amount of tests, but you don't have to fail all of them. But when it does happen that you're like pushing on and you're just trying to tempo it out, this card just gives you that like little bit of advantage. It makes the bag a little bit nicer because you've taken out some amount of curses and you added some blessed tokens in. So it's like live and learn. The second test is going to be a little bit more likely to succeed, but you're also just getting that action back, right? And because you're performing the test again, if you're using something like a fingerprint kit or a gun or anything with limited uses, you just don't have to spend the extra use and you still get the benefits if you succeed. Right? So, if you're using your fingerprint kit, you get that extra clue if you succeed on the second test. I think this is a pretty powerful card. 3 XP Survivor accessory slot is competitive, but I think if you're doing any kind of curse build, you're going to trigger this every round and you're just getting an extra action every round and free blessed tokens. That's great. I think that is definitely worth the investment, right? Like, this card feels pretty strong to me. I'm excited to see what people are going to do with this. So yeah, that was my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're all caught up to the Hemlock Vale preview season. There's still a lot of cards in the box that we haven't seen, but it's already shaping up to be a pretty wild box, and I'm really excited to try it. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put them down in the comments, and I'll be seeing you until the end of time. Bye!